time?
Well, you can.
Seriously, you might want to move your truck up.
Green.
Got a green.
You know, just tap it. Read it, and now I'm gonna screen it.
Okay, now.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have this. It's not bad. It's recorded. It's not an executive session. Go check all there. Yes. Yeah.
It's on.
Video in here.
They need to all be on. I will let them know that.
Try. They ought to be on that.
Be on microphone.
Good.
Okay, yeah, it's on right now, but you can.
It's time. All right, it is 5 o'clock. Let's call the special meeting to order. We're going to be talking about the budget for next year. With us will be Jared from Crone. Sorry,
Brandon Barthel with Crown.
Brandon, okay. All right, I'm sorry, I don't know why I put Jared down. You have a Jared there?
Yep. Jared Hall's one of the partners, so he's my boss.
Oh, thanks for correcting me. You can be his boss. Anyway, I'll let you and Kristen kind of take this thing away.
All right. Do you have any comments before or talk about it? So, okay. Well, so kind of what we did last year, I think worked well. And what I figured we could do today is kind of just go through the forms that we've put together for submission to Gateway, and then eventually will be all the forms that will basically support the budget. So Form 1 is going to be your actual line item budget, what you're spending out of each of these funds, and then Form 2, that's going to cover your miscellaneous revenues. Basically, that's all of your revenues except for property taxes. Property taxes are treated separately with the assessed value and the tax rates. And then here, starting on page 7, this is something that the town has not qualified for since I've been working with the town, which is an excess levy appeal. And we can talk about this, but this is something that I recommend that the town looks into and strongly considers. Basically, what this is going to be is an increase to your maximum levy based on growth that you've seen in your assessed values. the state gives all cities and towns 4% as basically the growth quotient each year. And where some communities have larger increases in assessed value, like we've seen here over the last few years in Veedersburg, basically what this formula does is proves out that the assessed value has grown at a rate that is set by the state, and it was about 9% this year. So then basically if it's greater than 2% of 9%, so about 11%, then what you can do is increase your maximum levy to reflect your actual growth here in the community. So this is not a guarantee, but this is something that if the town decides to move forward would be the best avenue to increase your maximum levy. Something that's interesting about the timing of this is that with the state SB 1 changes, all the property tax reform that's coming up here in the next few years, this is the last year that they're allowing this maximum levy increase, like in this method. So really the timing is impeccable here that, you know, we're able to realize the growth from 2025, able to have this opportunity.
Since you recommend it, how do we go about
So
applying for this?
so to go through the process here, there is some forms that are prescribed by DLGF, and basically what we need to do is just prove that the town needs this funding. Public safety, I think, is one that I think of off the top of my head. With the growth in AV, it's going to require some math that we've done, and then it's going to require some wordsmithing on our application to the DLGF. But you know, we can kind of work together and work with Kristen on some of the reasoning that we want to go ahead and put in our appeal. But one that I think of off the top of my head is definitely public safety, where we did hire an additional officer this year that we included in the budget. So where that excess levy, you know, could go towards paying, you know, that additional officer to extend services here in town. So things like that, you know, we'll have to think of some concrete examples, but that's one that I think of that we'll definitely want to consider. So this is basically an increase in your property taxes. So wherever you see fit is where that money can go. Right now I have in the model, I have all that going towards the general fund, which does cover the fire department. But I think for the application specifically, we'll just really need to hone in on that we include in that. It's basically like a 10-page document that Kristen put together. And then after that, there would be a resolution. So that would be on your end, basically a 1 or 2 page resolution states that the town would like to go forward with the excess levy appeal, and that's kind of procedurally what would need to happen.
Do we need a motion to go forward with that?
I think of, you know, maybe a motion today to continue, I guess, to continue on with that, but then the resolution, I'm guessing, would happen at the October meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we put $50,000 in the general fund.
Correct. Yeah, it's about,
And then we can dedicate.
correct.
Split it up.
Yep.
What, 1% or so, you said?
So the percentage is about, the state gives you 4%. With the excess levy appeal, you would be getting an additional 14.69%. So about an additional 15% increase in your levy. And the reason why, if you're looking on page 7 of the handout, the major increase happened from 2024 to 2025. The assessed value went from $64.5 million to $83.1 million. And since the way this method works is a year in arrears, we couldn't reckon. At this time last year, I knew that we would be in line for this, but we can't actually realize that gain without doing this appeal here in
I just saw that 1%. So 1.18, 19, whatever.
Yep, so 1.18 is the average, the 3-year average. That's step 3, and then step 4 and 5 is 1.0991. So that's about 9.91% that's a number that the state gives us. And then basically, if we can prove out that we're 2% greater than 9.91%, which we are, then that's the mathematical calculation that has to be done, and then rolls forward into the actual appeal put together.
Things change for taxes coming up here in the next
Yep.
couple of years. How are we going to?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, I know I'm beating a dead horse. Fire departments are,
Mm-hmm.
equipment, little things, and we're even taking care of our own trucks. I know you guys don't hear this, but can't keep doing that. Gotta, I don't know. Well, one,
Mm-hmm.
gotta do something.
So a couple of comments on that. As for the fire department, every year we put $0 from CCD. Is that money that can be used towards those expenses?
What is it?
The CCD fund, the Cumulative Capital Development Fund, basically you get 5 cents on your AV, so it amounts to about $40,000 a year in revenues that goes into that fund. And my note that I've had every year is that we put 0 because that is committed to the fire department only, and only they can spend that. So
Basically, that's township can't do if
mhm.
if it was known with what the township's putting in. Not even close. We just replace those.
Mhm.
We just money's just not there. So what we're going first call. We see it. That's good.
Well, I think then we'll definitely want to revisit the general fund, police and fire equipment. I had just done what had been done last year for fire specifically. So maybe I can take a look and revisit that number. I mean, did you have a number in mind, or just, I think that, I think that the budget is not tight yet, because a lot of these rolling changes we're not going to see until the property taxes, those are phasing out over, I think, 5 years. So from a high level, what we're mostly going to see is a shift from residential taxpayers to commercial or larger taxpayers because of the deductions. One deduction for residents is increasing, which is then resulting in less taxes to be collected by residents, and the other way around. Generally speaking, we would expect net assessed value to decrease. Your assessed value has been going up, and that's what we can see on that levy appeal. But what you actually pay after, or what the taxpayers actually pay after all the deductions, the net assessed value, based on what we've seen with other communities, and this, it's a highly technical calculation that basically shows that net assessed values will generally go down, and every community is different, but I would expect on the conservative side to expect property tax collections by the town to decrease because of the change in deductions, which is going to happen over a 5-year period, so we have time to plan for that. I think for 2026, for today, we definitely want to focus on getting that excess levy appeal, because that's going to be about that not only will we get in 2026, but we'll get in future years as well. So over 10 years, that's $550,000 that we would not have had otherwise. I think with the SB1 changes on property tax side, because of the relationship with assessed value, levy, and the tax rate, the levy is what it's going to be. 2027, unless they change something, it'll increase by 4%. So then if your AVs are going up, and then basically, that other part of that is that tax rate. So if your actual net AV is going down, then to offset that, it would require keeping your tax rate up. There are some communities who, part of their budgeting process is to keep the tax rate level, which is important. I think it's a political decision, and also when there's tax increment financing involved, the TIF.
Saying that, we don't use all that money.
So whatever you levy and collect, you keep it. And then what changes from year to year is the budget, what you actually spend. That's,
But will that affect when we lose what we had? What I'm saying?
I don't understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's
As far
true.
as public safety.
Mhm.
100% spent, it didn't get spent.
Just go
all
to the
for
general
public
fund,
safety.
right?
Yeah.
It gets moved to the general fund, but come the following year, do you get that same back? Or being that you've seen that you've been transferred to general funds, we didn't use it, that's what I'm saying, because
Mhm.
with the fire department, equipment is expensive. We really need to replace 2 trucks, which we know we can't.
Mhm.
So, there's really no way of saving, accumulate money over the years to get a new truck if, not only that, I'm looking at equipment at $90,000 right now just for,
Mhm.
we don't have it, we can't.
So
My thing is, as long as we don't lose it here next year, just trying to get, not trying
You
to
want
get.
to carry it over.
Yes,
You got anything left.
exactly, that's what I'm saying, so you don't, you know what I'm saying? Because
Yep, I do,
we'll
and
just-
you
we'll
can
take a
do
step
that.
backwards.
You can definitely do that. So if we're levying $30,000 in taxes, the revenues, and we're going to spend 25, we end up only spending 20, then we're still getting 30. So that's
But
where
that won't affect the next year.
it won't affect the next year. What would change from year to year is the budget. Once you collect it, think about your bank account. $50,000, you only spent 30. Well, then bank account just increased by 20, and that cash stays, and that's an important part of planning for capital projects and larger expenses like the fire trucks. With that CCD fund, you're getting about $40,000 a year. So at the end of 2026, it will probably be around 250,000, and that's growth from, it was at 189,000.
We got that because of fire truck.
Yeah.
Building.
Yep. So yeah, the same thing will go in the general fund. We budget so much, and you don't spend all of your budget, then you're still collecting what you're collecting.
It's every other, it's not
Yep.
fire, others.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, so tightening up the budget as much as we can, I think is going to help, and I've tried to do that here. There's kind of some items that are increasing, items that are staying the same, and there's other offset items, I guess, that aren't, I would consider them non-recurring, like mowers, something I put in there. We've got a new police vehicle, Horizon, outfit into, so we're not buying a vehicle every year, but fire department, something else I think of that I'm not sure if anyone's talked about is a debt fund. You can only save up so much money for a certain period of time to pay for something like that. A property tax backed bond is something to consider as well. That's a little out of my expertise, but I know that someone at our firm could definitely talk more about that. Is a property tax backed. Basically, it has its own tax rate fund and 5 cents. It would be an increase in taxes, but it would be specifically project like that. So something else to consider. Well, you know, it only saves so much. So, well, no other kind of general comments. I think that what would be good is we could take a look at the Form 1, and that's budget estimates as of today, and what worked well last year. Because when we went through some of these line items and got feedback, either this needs to change, this needs to go up, this needs to go down, this needs to stay the same. You know? So if there's, these numbers have been, you guys have any off your head or when it started, definitely look at some of these. Some of the kind of the general changes that have been made, recommending 5% increases in wages. That's the same percentage that was used last year. Some of these increases are corresponding with wages, such as Social Security, FICA, and Medicare. That's a 7.65% of health insurance this was a number that Kristen had got recently from a health insurance provider, a 20% increase on the horizon, so I did include that there. Some of these other line items are the same as 2025. A couple that have changed. The fire department supplies, I had done a decrease because of the fire radios that were purchased last year, but based on what we talked about, we might visit that. That line item could be for fire department. Then on the last line item, police and fire equipment. That's where I've got a police vehicle and outfitting. I've got $70,000 in there for that. Not sure if that's good, or Kristen said you guys were looking at a Dodge Charger. No? Okay.
Probably a Ford.
No, let the record show. So what are you thinking then? That's what I was. Okay.
I have a quote from Ford right now for the vehicle itself is $55,600. It does come with things that we purchase as part of the outfit. So I'm thinking we can get that particular, shows that one done. Because they'll use parts off of the Dodge Charger.
I think it's 65,000 roughly.
Yes.
And you've got it set at what? 70?
70.
Let's leave it at 70, because it seems like in the past we've had some overruns, and there'll probably be a little bit of a price increase by the time we order it.
I mean, it's not, it's a 2026 model.
Okay.
It'll be here till the first quarter of next year. So,
Okay.
Okay.
I think
That's good. Yeah, whatever it is, 70 is.
That's actually a good number. I saw that, I thought, oh, that's good.
Well, if you
Yeah.
have,
Good.
if something would happen, that out.
So you're 15 to 20.
Yep. And if that comes in under, then that's more budget you can consider in that line item. Hopefully that happens, but if it doesn't, then we're prepared.
when could we safely order that? Do you have to wait till January to actually order it?
That's what I would recommend, just because we're contingent on approve the budget as is and the excess levy appeal.
Okay.
Not to say that if those things don't happen, that a police can't be purchased. It's just to stay on the safe and conservative side.
Okay.
If anything changes, then we might need to take a harder look at this across the board. Gotten here, general building and maintenance, I had a decrease in there. There were some HVAC expenses in 2025. So, there was a bit of a decrease there. And then I have $10,000 as an estimate for furniture and carpet for town hall, police, and fire department. Does that seem reasonable?
I know we hadn't talked about it, other than the carpet was coming up in your office and our office, and then, I don't know about the police station, but we called Patton's. They're supposed to get us a quote. They haven't been here yet, maybe next week. So we're just guessing. I mean, I know we hadn't talked about it totally, that we were going to do anything, but I just thought if you guys wanted to, put it in there.
I think it'd be nice to do it since we have our water leaks fixed from the each, run it in there. But
Just looking through the general fund some more. I can review the fire department expenses. You would be able to just kind of get a list together of kind of some things that you're thinking and some prices, and send it over to Kristen. Then she can send it to me, and then we can look at that. Sounds like we're kind of getting geared up for the September meeting. Is that one?
I think I originally had it like at the next meeting in August, but we can move it.
I think that.
Yeah,
Okay.
24th.
So shooting for that to get these numbers.
since those jaws are like 90,000, can we throw a number out there of like 100 each year for the fire department?
Sorry, I was distracted.
Do one thing at a time. The jaws are 90,000. We could do 100,000 continuous each year, replace some stuff.
Let me look at 100,000.
Okay.
But
That's a big number.
Yeah. So kind of two trains of thought. One train is similar to the conversation about storing cash for specific items. That's kind of seemed, a lot of that was what was happening last year. The bottom line on page 4 was the unit total in the budget. When you just look at that one number, there was a huge increase in the budget, 25. But a lot of that there were a lot of one-time expenses in there.
Yep.
So that's kind of the nature of budgeting, is you do want to save up.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't keep doing that, and I'm looking at. We're talking dollars to place all those.
I know it'd be up to RDC, but TIP can pay for public safety items now, right? And didn't that change in the law recently?
Yep, as long as it benefits and area
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, it's all these little things are like starting to accumulate. So we've been working on our own trucks. But we're using our own funds, other places using.
Yep, yeah, if you could just get a list put together and some price estimates and get over my way, that'll be really helpful, and then I can start kind of looking at those different line items and see what can change.
And then I'm trying to take two vehicles. At the time, we're going to I'm trying to figure out how to do that with the town and the township.
And then that might kind of be where the discussion might need to happen about kind of long-term financing.
That's why I've been saying that accumulating thing. What I'm trying to do, of replacing stuff, all of that.
We'll include that in your in your list. I mean, while we're talking short-term, long-term, next couple years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm able to get that info. The more info I have, the better I think that, I do appreciate it.
Jesse, anything you can think of on your side? I mean, well, yeah, 2 trucks this year, hopefully we're good.
We're just looking at replacing the Ranger and electric pickup truck.
Okay.
On the electric side, Chris said the money's there, and
Okay.
Ranger, and she added it in there as well.
Yeah, I think that one's out of gauge. Equipment. Ranger, and then mower on there too. That's a lot heavy duty of a mower than I just bought.
Yes.
So, well, if are there any more questions on general fund? We can start talking about some of those other funds. Yes, sir.
On page 2, under the general telephone, what all is that? Is that a question?
I would have to look at some of those expenses, but I just, looking at that, it's really just the budget hasn't really needed to change much from year to year.
The reason I say that is,
Okay.
Maybe if something, 6 o'clock meeting, we're gonna have to get cell phones quickly. Myself or one of my officers loses their phone because they're having to use it on a daily basis, calls. As part of the case, we get asked for our phones, we're gonna be without a phone. It's hard for me to tell one of my guys, the phone he pays for, give to me, gotta be sent to the lab. Down Terre Haute and be pumped. And I'm sure we've all got a lot of things on our phones that we don't want our people seeing, so.
Have 2 departments?
We had a phone, one.
One, well, that's when we only had one person.
I think when Neil was here, I think we had a phone.
Neil always kept it.
Well, we've got a guy here, I'm sure he can fix this up on
I
the
actually
phone.
talked to Luke today, yeah.
Pay their,
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you gotta go up there.
Okay.
on here is like our office phone. So like, that's just our monthly. But the body cams, that comes out of the police.
Oh, not
Down.
bike, that was.
Well,
bike in,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, so I mean, I guess it wouldn't matter because it's general fund.
Yeah,
Telephone
That-
or police supply.
if that's something that you guys move forward with, I would recommend it comes out of that last line, police, fire equipment. If we need to make changes to that line item based on that info, then just let me know, and we can do that. But yeah, I'd say anything police related. Applies or the police equipment. If there are any other questions on general fund, just kind of gloss over kind of some of these other funds, local road, didn't have many changes here. Just keep the same last year. And MVH, we talked about a couple of these, Ranger, mower. There's a major change here at the last line is that MVH restricted. Reminder that MVH, half of those distributions split fund. So that MVH restricted, that was we had estimated a $200,000 match for a community crossings grant this year, 2025, which did not happen, I believe. So that's budget that you didn't spend. Cash is going to end up in that fund, in that restricted. So Right now, I have 0 coming out of MVH restricted. I think this is an important one here because if anything is coming out of MVH restricted for community crossings, then we're gonna need to know because that's gonna affect how much of a levy we put on MVH. If we're spending more out of MVH, then we're gonna need more revenues. So that property tax levy, it can be interchanged between general fund, the MVH fund. If we don't need as much MVH, I would recommend to push that all to general fund. If we're gonna spend anything for crossings, and
Where do we stand with community crossings? In the works.
It's in the works. We gotta have them update our ADA transition plan. They're supposed to be getting me a proposal for that. Tracking down on those plans, making sure they're all up to date. And it'll be in design and this fall.
Still a chance it could get awarded this fall.
Okay, I've got a question. On that right there on the paving, we're doing that out of that grant. We're not planning on doing any kind of paving at all outside that grant.
Outside of community crossings? No. The only paving we do outside of community crossings would be in patchwork. That can come straight out of water, sewer, electric.
Okay.
on the MVH restricted for the money's there for 2025. That's not spent, then that's just going to be more cash in that MVH to use for something down the line. So if that does change for 2026, then I'll just need to know. The rest of these funds are fairly straightforward. Swimming pool increases on the pay has a corresponding increase on taxes. I'd recommend an increase in chemicals. But this one's the budget is relatively stable. We talked about CCD, and then the local law enforcement, that we have $500 in there, and that's just one that, unfortunately, there's not a lot of revenues, hardly at all, that kind of goes in there. So that is a fund that kind of you can really just only spend what you got in that one. So I think that permits were gun permits were kind of like a source of revenue in that fund, and then once that changed, yeah, so.
Yeah, the tickets, actually, the tickets go into that fund.
Yeah, tickets.
But, you know, tickets
Yeah,
you get
if everyone's being good.
$4 a ticket, you're gonna have tickets. And we,
Something that Chris and I talked about too when we were working through this is there was a concern that was brought up with the economic development shares as part of that SB1 change. And we talked a lot about the property taxes. On the local income tax side, there's going to be some changes there that we won't expect for a few years. But basically, wherever the local income taxes end up, we're able to use that for general purpose revenue. So it's not that there will no longer be economic development shares. That is true. What's not true is that there won't be anything else to replace that. Kind of where they're basically just they have all these different tax sources, and they're kind of just conglomerating all those into one local income tax use. There are that economic development consultant is still included in the budget. As the economic development shares decrease, then it'll just kind of we'll have to when that time comes to look available. other questions or comments on the Form 1? I can run through our model and have that ready for you guys in a couple weeks. Think of anything tonight at 3 a.m., then, morning, don't text me at 3 a.m., but in the morning, you can let Krista know, and then she can message. Moving on quickly, just through this Form 2. This is basically our estimates for all the revenues, aside from property taxes for the town. We looked at the Form 1 first, but typically when I do this, I'll look at the revenue sources first, and that kind of gives me an idea of what's going to be available for the budget. So the local income tax is a big one here, and we are conservative on our estimates. You get certified and supplemental shares at this time, any change. But we're assuming the certified shares only for next year. So they've got more in 25 than we project in 26, and generally just trying to stay consistent so that not over-promising the budget. Another major line item here is payment in lieu of tax. That hasn't changed for quite some time. A payment from the utilities to the general fund, which basically serves the purpose of acting as tax revenue, as if the town did have a privately owned utility. So privately owned utilities pay property taxes to the towns that they reside in, and as a municipal utility, there are no property taxes that are required. So payment in lieu of tax serves as a mechanism for general fund to collect revenues based on the fact that not a taxable entity, but if it was, then that would be an estimate for taxes they collected on. That's what that's for. Hasn't changed in quite some time. Not saying it needs to change now, but I do think that it's something to consider moving forward in the next few years as the SB 1 changes roll through. If we're seeing decreases in the revenues, the question for the council is going to be, where can we pick up as much of those revenues as we can? And payment in lieu of tax would be one that I would definitely take a hard look at. It would require likely a rate increase on the utilities to help sustain the general fund losses, if any. So just information for you all to kind of consider for future years, that $80,000 is a number that could possibly change. The rest of these line items are either based estimates on previous years, or kind of some of the major ones are coming from the local tax, and then there are state estimates for a handful of these taxes and are recommended, like the CVETs and ABC gallonage tax and cigarette tax and kind of some of those. So with all that being said, that all kind of rolls forward into the cash projections, which are shown. We've already talked about page 7, kind of talking about that excess. But on the last page, just shows the cash flow from left to right. Basically, that blue column on the right-hand side kind of shows where the cash is, and it's stayed relatively stable, I think, which is good. Problem with that is that it doesn't save a lot for the future, but based on kind of where we have the budget set today and where those levy allocations kind of able to keep those cash balances relatively stable. This does account for no money coming out of MVH or crossings as of now. So if that were to happen, the budget's there, and there would be less cash, but kind of worth just that. But I think that, with these budget items, obviously we're going to make some changes, and some of this will change shape. This also accounts for the maximum levy increase from the excess levy appeal, which is a huge part of this. So On the tax rate, in the bottom right-hand corner, you can kind of see where we would expect the tax rate to be, somewhere around 50 or 60 cents. It kind of depends on where that AV comes in for 2026. But the thing is with the excess levy appeal, is that last year, we had significant increases in AV, but we're not able to realize those gains, which drove down the tax rate. So then here, the tax rate, to keep up with the AV increases, would expect that to increase. Also is going to help the TIF. Tax rate as high as the council makes sense and necessary. Because of that tax rate, if we didn't do the excess levy appeal, it would drive the tax down even more. And going to so, last year we were kind of at got as much as we could. Drive down the tax rate. Any other comments, questions?
Good at this time? We have none unless Kristen does.
All right, well, again, if you guys think of anything else here in the next few days, please reach out to Kristen and pass along some info. I took some notes, some of that we want to revisit, and copy of these numbers a few days prior to your decision. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Budget meeting and be adjourned.
You have a card?
What? No, I didn't. Raised the price, What? Yes, $10 a pack now. Those cow heads.